The Guardians announced that Manny Ramirez will be inducted into the Hall of Fame later this summer. So my question for you guys today is, should the Guardians retire Ramirez is number 24?
I'm a hard no on that, but is there a yes on the panel?
I think they should do Kenny Lofton before they get to Manny.
I'm with you. I think, and outside of Kenny Lofton, I think the next number they should retire should be Jose's. And follow my logic. If you look at the guys that have their numbers retired, now I know that the game was much different. The players were not nearly as transient as they are now. Mm-hmm. Guys played their entire careers with one team. Now that's nobody does that. Like when Derek Jeter retired, you literally were thinking, is this going to be the last guy that starts and ends a Hall of Fame career with one team? And they certainly don't do that in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
Manny took $50 million less than he could have. The Blue Jays' reported offer was worth much more than what the Guardians' offer was. I think that retiring a player's number should be reserved for a guy like Jose Ramirez, who had an opportunity to leave. All of them left from that 90s core team. All of them left at some point. Bell left. Ramirez was here 8 years. He left. Even Jim Thome left. I thought Thome might be the guy that decided he would stay here. So I want Jose Ramirez's number to be retired. And I just don't think Manny, 8 years, 8 great years, particularly his last 2, but I don't know. I don't see it.
This is a legacy move. Anybody that was around 95, 96, 97, they automatically is on the board. They just because like who they is. Like you got Albert Bell. Like when you talk about that team, right? Kenny Lofton, he should have already been up there. He should have already been there. To me, Sandy Alomar, Vizquel, Manny, Albert Bell. I'm trying to think of anybody else that probably would get it at that point. Other than that, those 4,
Kenny Lofton, to me, he had 3 different stints here.
Yeah,
fans loved him.
I mean, that was the show.
But you know what? The one caveat to me is no World Series.
Yeah.
None. Like most of the guys that had their numbers retired, like Frank Robinson was historical. He was the first black manager.
Yep.
He wasn't a player here of any note. He spent his career with the Baltimore Orioles. All of those guys won championships and played their careers in Cleveland. I think all of them, their entire careers. Bob Feller, obviously, you talk about an American hero. Here's a guy that in the height of his prime went to the Iowa recruiting station on December 8th, 1941, and signed up to go fight the Japanese in World War II.
Yeah.
And missed 4 years in the height of his prime. That's the kind of stuff you reserve retiring a player's number for. Albert Bell?
Could you tell, so I look at it like this. Can you tell the history of the Cleveland Indians without mentioning Albert Bell?
I don't think you can.
No.
I don't think you
No,
can.
I don't think you can either, but is that the test?
Well, yeah, because that means for that era, for that to me, there's a generation of people who, when you say Cleveland Indians, you say Lofton, Bell, Baerga, Sandy Alomar,
Ramirez,
Thome. That's it, all of them. Like I can't have, when I see Jim Thome, I'm like, where the rest of the gang at? Because for us, that was the greatest baseball we've seen in our lives.
Yeah,
Albert Bell was transcended. He played the game of baseball with an intimidation factor that I've never seen.
Yeah.
Pitchers were literally scared. Now, this today, pitchers were literally scared to throw the baseball. They said, listen, I want to parse with Albert Bell. And he playing baseball, but like he was boxing or something. Kenny Lofton, when you talk about he was revolutionized the way people watch. You would watch him not only for how many stolen bases, for not only what he did with the bat, but his glove.
Robbing home runs.
Manny Ramirez, we would say, yo, Manny could hit home runs. He was the baby bull, and he had a cannon. He would throw you out from right field standing.
I have such a bitter taste in my mouth that crew never won.
Yes,
and so
I cried.
1, 2, and 3 in the history of the Indians and Guardians and home runs are Thome, Bell, and Ramirez. Okay? Thome, Bell, and Ramirez. The 3 of them combined to hit over 800 home runs just here. Now, they played more of their seasons outside of Cleveland than they did here.
Right.
Those 3 combined for 800 home runs. They never won a World Series. By the way, to show you where this team is now, those 3 hit more home runs
That's crazy.
than the Guardians/Indians have hit in the last 5 seasons combined as a team together. And they didn't win a World Series. And to me, that's the check mark. That's more of an indictment than an endorsement.
But if you look at it, Jason, when they went up against the Atlanta Braves, to me, is that not the greatest pitching rotation of all time?
I'll first,
in the era.
It is in the modern era. But here's another thing: that Braves team, for all of its greatness and for all of their multiple National League East Division titles, they only won 1 World Series, and it was against us.
That's
And
crazy.
I haven't written the story yet. I really got to write the Bell story.
Yeah, I was going to ask how that's going.
Yeah, I need to get on it and just knock it out. But Albert will tell you the reason the Braves won is because the home plate umpire, regardless of who it was giving him 6 inches off the plate.
It was the worst umpiring for any series in the playoffs that I've ever seen.
And he said the one game when they made Glavine, when they weren't giving it to Glavine, is when they hit him. So to Albert, the reason they lost that series is because
how it was called.
The home plate umpires were giving him 6 inches off the plate.
I will completely second that. It sounds like sour grapes.
It does.
But the facts are the facts. They're unchangeable. That team did not win a World Series despite having 3 of the greatest power hitters
ever.
Statistically, the 3 greatest power hitters this franchise has ever seen, and they were all there together for a number of years, and they did not win a World Series. That's an indictment.
Well, they were only all together really 95 and 96. Because then Bell left. Really, they only had the 2 years.
Yeah, Bell left.
Wait, Bell was gone in 97? He wasn't.
He left after 96.
He played for the White
He left after 96. 96 was his last year. So really, they had the lockout in 94.
Yeah.
They had 95 together in the series. They had 96, which was
94. I felt they were
right
as
there.
good as anybody.
They were
in 94.
a game and a half out of first place in 94, and 96 was just the bitter loss to the Orioles.
That's still
95 and 97 stand out. 96 is probably worse to me
because they lost to the Orioles. I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. Out of nowhere.
By 97, Bell was gone and Lofton was gone in 97.
Baerga was gone after 95, right?
Baerga, they traded Baerga, I think, in the middle of 96.
I wasn't even born yet.
Because Sean Dunston was their second baseman, right? In 97, wasn't he? Or no, Fernandez.
No.
Tony Fernandez.
Tony Fernandez, yep.
With the home run. Yeah.
Man. He made the error in the Game 7 in Florida against the Marlins.
But think about that. Bell leaving and how that changed. That's the reason they traded Lofton was because Bell left as a free agent. And they couldn't take the chance of losing Kenny as well.
And he was Marquise Grissom straight up, wasn't it?
Yep.
And Justice. They got Grissom and Justice for Kenny.
And they played very well. They played well when they got here.
Man. Yeah, it's just I'm not for retiring his number.
And plus there's a difference between – I mean, they're already putting him in the Hall of Fame. So –
Is he coming back, Manny?
Who knows?
I mean, it's scheduled for August 19th. I just wonder I was talking to some of the folks at the Guardians at spring training about Albert Bell not showing up when he was put in.
You know why he didn't show?
Well, you told me that he had issues with the organization and how they treat Latin American players. And
oh, no. Well,
or was that someone else that told me that?
That was a different thing.
Okay.
Albert didn't show up because John Hart was there. And to this day, he is so angry and bitter toward John Hart that
why?
Because John wouldn't give him the contract he wanted. And I'll get into this in the story, but he and I went round and round during our 2 hours together because I'm like, well, Albert, he was just following the orders of ownership. That's not John's call. That's ownership saying this is the amount I'm willing to go. And Albert said, well, then they should have brought Dick Jacobs into that meeting because to this day, Albert holds it against John Hart that he didn't give him the money.
Well, does Albert have a point when you're talking about your franchise player? Does he have a point? that let's bring Dick Jacobs into this.
Probably that Dick probably should have been part
I think that's a fair point. that
I mean,
Albert
they
made.
did it with Paul Dolan and Jose.
Yes.
Like they brought Paul
and
in.
you're the
to close
closer
the deal.
at that point.
Do you think-
And sometimes the words of an organization, when they come directly from the mouth of the owner, have so much more weight than if they're
Yeah.
relayed through and through and through. First of all, I've always viewed it as a sign of disrespect. If the owner can't get involved, particularly when it's the star player and the star player wants that,
Yeah.
show up.
Albert was also angry about Eddie Murray and the fact that they cut Eddie Murray.
Oh, really?
They cut Eddie's salary.
He,
And he was really, and Eddie was really upset about that too.
Yeah.
That's Eddie stopped playing first base and said, "Well, then I'm only a DH."
Yeah.
Well, I look at the Dolans. The Dolans buy the team, right? You have to think that they have to feel a certain type of way. Like, hold on, you guys don't give us no benefit of the doubt. Like, it's almost like they wear the scarlet letter for the Jacobs dismantling the team, right? Like, you got to think about it. There's people who, to this day, will not get over it. They're like, I can't believe they dismantled the best team I've ever seen. We lost player after player, year after year. And then it got to the Dolans, and it was like, well, hey, we didn't do that. That was Dick Jacobs and his crew.
I'm trying to remember the timing because I think they bought at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
Bell had already left, but Manny and Tomey both left on the Dolan's
Yeah,
watch,
right.
if memory
Right.
serves. But the timing was awful for them in terms of, I mean, Dick Jacobs was a genius. Like, made a ton of money off the franchise and got out at exactly the right time.
And then they
bought at the right time.
And
He
then
bought-
Jacobs Field is known as, like, they had the best ballpark. Everybody said Jacobs Field.
Yeah.
How was this small market team? They have this lineup that is as good as the Big Red Machine. They got everything you need, and then all of a sudden you get a new ownership group, and it's like,
We can't afford these
We can't
salaries.
afford that.
The Jacobs brothers are hailed for saving baseball in Cleveland, and rightfully so.
Yeah, they did.
They
They
did.
did.
But they were also, talk to anyone who was around, they were very shrewd businessmen who were only going to spend whatever was brought in, and not a dollar more.
And at the time, we was bringing in some cash.
But that's why Bell left.
Well,
Like they
well,
were
they bought it when, like 86?
Oh gosh, you're testing me now.
I want
It's something.
to think it was like the fall of '86, and it was the perfect time to buy. The whole idea of buying is buying low and selling high. What they did here, you're right, was business genius. They bought a franchise that many thought was on the verge of leaving.
Yeah.
Because the stadium was a relic. They were where the Oakland A's are now.
Yeah.
Because if you think about how cavernous the Oakland Stadium is, Municipal Stadium was built to host the 1920 Olympics or whatever year it was,
Yeah.
32 Olympics, I think. It was this big, round, Olympic-type stadium, and it was the last thing you want to do in there is play baseball. And they were losing 100 games a year, and the Jacobs brothers waltz in, buy the team, and then through some very shrewd moves, draft well, and then they bet on all of these young kids at the same time. The Baergas, the Bells, the Tomeys, the
Yep.
Ramirez, they were all in. They signed them to
That
longer-term
was John
contracts than
Hart.
baseball was
Yep,
doing.
yep.
That was all John Hart. And then when they reached the point where they could leave town, Dick Jacobs said, I'm out.
Yep.
And
Because I don't want to take the hit for
That's
all of
exactly
these
it.
guys leaving.
And on top of it, they got the opportunity to move from the AL East, which was devastating.
Oh,
This is
man.
huge.
You was playing Boston. You was playing
New York.
New York.
They go
Toronto.
now you go to the Central, and you're like, oh, we only got the White Sox.
That was a gift.
Yeah, it
that
was.
would take that.
Yeah,
It really was.
That
and,
was a gift.
and to put a bow on all of it, the team would have left had Gateway not passed. Gateway
100%.
saved the team, and the only reason Gateway passed is because the Cavs moved from Richfield to Cleveland. Gordon Gunn made an unbelievable deal for himself, and the only reason they got involved is because Mike White, the mayor at the time, really wasn't interested in building another stadium. He didn't really care about sports. But when he was sold on the idea of bringing an arena to downtown Cleveland that could be filled 300 nights a year, whatever it is, that is what got him interested in
Yeah.
it. Otherwise, that thing would have fell. It barely passed as it was. The whole thing would
And
have
all
fallen
of that, by the
apart.
way, played a role in the Browns leaving.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's funny how
It's
the
all
history
connected.
of all three of these teams are all
Yep.
interwoven. Go ahead, Mike.